This weekend, the final film in the DCEU drops in theaters. 10 years ago, it launched with so much excitement, and while there were some highs, there were moments of excitement. Overall, the DCEU never gained any momentum. It was always hit or miss, and it never felt consistent, and therefore, last year, they decided to reboot the entire thing kind of out of the blue. So what on earth happened? Here's my 10 reasons that the DCEU failed. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts. Why do you think the DCEU failed? Why did it never gain the popularity of the MCU? Why did it need to be rebooted so soon? Point of reference as we go into this, I actually really enjoy most of the DCEU films. There's only 3 of them that I don't like, and 2 of those are due to the top-level reworking of directors' visions. But it obviously didn't grab hold of the popular culture the way that they hoped. Most of you probably didn't or dislike more of these films than I did. And so this isn't me talking about why I didn't like the DCEU. This is me diving into what happened. Why didn't it work on the whole for more people? Why didn't it catch on as a reason? Number 1, it was built on a bad foundation for a shared universe. To be perfectly clear, I have been on the record since the weekend that the movie came out praising this film, and as time has passed, I've only been more positive about the movie Man of Steel. So when I say it's built on a bad foundation, I really do mean for a shared universe. And what I mean by that is, if you don't know where the idea for Man of Steel came about, during the writing process for The Dark Knight Rises, the screenwriter David Goyer took a week off from writing that script to kind of clear his mind.
The legend is that Man of Steel came out of writer's block on Dark Knight Rises.
That's true. We were blocked, and Chris said, okay, let's just take a week off.
We had writer's block. I had some old Superman action comics. Just started reading them and just spent a couple hours randomly writing up a take.
He went to Christopher Nolan and he said, hey, I've got this idea for a Superman movie. I haven't been working on the movie I'm supposed to be writing for you, but I got this other idea. He pitches it to Nolan. Nolan liked that idea, and he goes to Warner Brothers and pitches it to them.
I told it to him, and he said, I would produce that if you want. He literally called up Jeff Robinoff, then head of Warner Brothers, said, Goyer's got the Superman take.
Which, this is after Dark Knight just came out and was beloved by fans, critics, and sold a bazillion tickets, in which case Nolan going to WB with a pitch for a new superhero movie, they love it, they eat it up, they tell him yes. That's where Man of Steel came from.
My friend Christopher Nolan called me and said, would you have any interest in making a Superman movie? David Goyer and I wrote a Superman script, and I don't think I want to do it.
And the pitch, the idea that they built Man of Steel on, was the concept of if Superman arrived in the world, it would be the biggest event in the history of the world.
And I realized that if the world became aware that Cal existed, it would be a first contact story. And in many ways, it would be the biggest thing that ever happened in human history. It would change the world forever. Just the sheer fact that he existed on the planet, and then subsequently the knowledge of what he could do, it would force the religions of the world to respond. There would be fear, there would be awe. Just the sheer fact that he existed would be the biggest story that ever happened in human history.
That was the idea that Goyer and Nolan latched onto. That Superman arriving would shake the world, it would change our understanding of the universe that we exist in. And when you watch that movie, that's what it's about. We're not alone. That's what Paquette keeps saying to his son. That's the way the world responds when Superman arrives and then the Kryptonians arrive. But it's built on the concept that there haven't been superheroes and ancient Greek gods on the earth all along. There haven't been superheroes everywhere, so the idea that Superman emerges would be something shocking and new. There are Easter eggs referencing Wayne Enterprises, LexCorp, but they're only Easter eggs, and the foundation of the first movie was Superman is the first of a thing like this to ever emerge. We haven't seen this before. And if you're trying to build a shared universe where Wonder Woman has existed for thousands of years and that all the Greek gods were real and there was an alien invasion, like, all this stuff that's established in the later films contradicts the starting premise for this film. That doesn't make Man of Steel bad, and it doesn't mean they were necessarily wrong to go where they went, but it didn't start out to be a shared universe. You watch Iron Man 2008, and all throughout the movie, they're laying the groundwork for organizations, for S.H.I.E.L.D., for more superheroes. That's not what Man of Steel did. That's not what Man of Steel intended to do, and it was built on an idea that there aren't superheroes out there yet. And almost immediately, they undo that. They undo that concept as soon as you start moving further into the DCEU because it's the wrong foundation for a shared universe. Reason number 2, blockbuster budgets for auteur and niche films. I wasn't quite sure how to exactly describe this one, but obviously the point of reference to compare the DCEU to would be the MCU. And what the MCU does really well, and what Disney has historically kind of been known for the last 20 years, is making these 4-quadrant films that are designed for men, women, grown-ups, children. They're very broad appeal. So you throw $200 million at this property that has action, it has comedy, has a little drama, maybe a little romance. It's designed for everyone. It's very broad appeal. It's not alienating to anyone. Therefore, it's likely that that movie can make money on a $200 million budget. And one of the big criticisms of the MCU is there's a certain sameness, there's a formula, and all of that really is true, but it's a formula that tends to have very broad appeal, and the MCU is very producer-driven. Feige has power, but he designs these movies to appeal to a very broad group of people. Now, with the DCEU, pretty much from the very beginning, they didn't do that. They brought in someone like Zack Snyder, who is a director that actually has a distinct style. When you see a Zack Snyder movie, you know you're watching a Zack Snyder movie. Some of it, or you might hate it about his movies, you might love it about his movies, the slow-mo, the color scheme, there's all of these distinctive things. It's very specific. Therefore, people love Zack Snyder films, and people hate Zack Snyder films. And he's a very polarizing director. And even if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score for Man of Steel, a movie that a lot of people love, and the reputation's gone really great over the last 10 years of people wanting more Henry Cavill in that role, it's in the 50s, which actually makes sense to me because Rotten Tomatoes is just critics. Do they give it a thumbs up or down? What percentage of critics recommend the film? Zack Snyder is a director with a very distinct style. He's spicy food. And people that like spicy food love spicy food. And people that don't like spicy food don't want to eat it at all. That's Zack Snyder. So you give spicy food guy distinct vision, Zack Snyder, $200 million, $250 million, $300 million, you will get a bunch of people that are very passionate about that thing that he made. But a bunch of other people are like, oh, it's too Zack Snyder, too much slow-mo, too much all of that stuff. He's not Kevin Feige. Like Kevin Feige makes it for everybody. Zack Snyder makes much more niche films. It's a very large niche, but they're much more specific, polarizing and alienating for a lot of people. And the DCU always kind of did that. That when you put that huge budget on it, you have expectations to make money way up here. And it's tougher to do that when you make a product that's designed for a smaller group of people, but that smaller group of people will love it, versus making a product that everyone kind of likes. Aquaman is much more in the vein of MCU. Broad appeal, lots of people, made a ton of money, but nobody's favored a DCEU film, where Zack Snyder films, maybe didn't make as much money, but are far more beloved by the people that do like them. And the DCEU kept kind of giving money to projects that are a little bit more niche, a little bit more specific in who they will appeal to, with a budget that kind of needs to appeal to a broader audience. Reason number 3, they were playing catch up from the start. As we mentioned in reason number 1, Man of Steel was not designed to build a shared universe on its back. So it didn't really lay the foundation to bring in all these other characters. It didn't dangle a bunch of plot threads to make it super easy to spin this off into Wonder Woman and spin that off into Batman. It was designed to be a Superman story that was supposed to shake the world and just kind of a couple Easter eggs that there's a little bit more out there. Well, while they were making Man of Steel, a year before Man of Steel comes out, this little movie called The Avengers comes out, and it makes over $1.5 billion. All of a sudden, the superhero genre is in a very different place, and it's like, wait a minute, we want that.
Was there a rush to kind of throw too many characters in there?
So. I think so. And I just think, I know the pressure that we were getting from Warner Brothers was just, we need our MCU.
We want MCU money. We want our movies to make $1 billion, and we've got Batman.
It was pretty early in the process that we were like going to bring Batman into the movie. Once you say that out loud, like we should have Batman in the movie, it's hard to put that back in that toothpaste back in the tube, you know? Because like they're like, well, we should have a cooler guy than Batman, and then that doesn't exist.
So as soon as Man of Steel comes out, 2 months later at Comic-Con, they announce that we're not just doing a Batman movie, we're doing Batman v Superman. We haven't even introduced this version of Batman yet, but we're putting him head to head with Superman. And by the time the movie comes out, it also has Wonder Woman in a prominent role, and we're teasing the other members of the Justice League, and we're rushing to one of the most iconic storylines out there, the death of Superman. Movie number 2, we haven't done normal Superman yet, and we kill Superman.
I was one of the people that was just saying, whoa, let's not run before we walk. Like, hold on. Like, they were very methodical in the way we built it. We just can't jump, into all of these things.
We haven't done normal Batman yet, but we're showing Batman as this jaded, angry version of himself out for revenge because we're rushing to something. They're rushing through what the MCU took 4 years and 5 movies to do. They're trying to do it much quicker. So instead of setting up characters in individual movies, they're just throwing them together really quick and not laying the foundation for all of it and trying to do too much in individual films to play catch up. And I think that shot them in the foot. And I'm not the first person to say this. Many people have said, well, they should have done Man of Steel, then they should have done the Batman, then they should have done Wonder Woman, then maybe do we do Batman v Superman? But they didn't. And so it just felt rushed together to try and copy the MCU success. But part of the MCU success is being those 4-quadrant movies designed to be very broad appeal. And Zack Snyder is not that guy. Zack Snyder makes movies that this group of people love, and a lot of other people are like, what? What was that? What's all the slow-mo? Why is it so depressing? Reason number 4, no vision from the studio. So, Zack Snyder is a director that you can actually honestly say, now that's a visionary director right there. He has a distinct vision. He has images in his mind that he wants to bring to the big screen. That's his strength. And Warner Brothers likes to be known as a director-friendly studio. So when they kicked off the DCEU, that's what they kind of wanted to do. They bring in these guys, they write their scripts, they start making their movies. Then 2016 happens. And Deadpool comes out, and it's an R-rated comic book movie that's really funny. And Batman v Superman comes out, and it's really dark and gets negative reviews. And so these studio heads that were like, we are very director-centric. They were, until they weren't. And all of a sudden, they backtrack on all of this. So Batman v Superman is a movie that the correct cut is 3 hours long, but they released it at 2.5 hours long. So it didn't make any sense when they first released it, and that poisoned the well for that movie. And then David Ayer writes one Suicide Squad movie. And back to what we just said before, they were playing catch up. Supposedly, he only had 6 weeks to write the original version of it. So they're like, let's do this. Oh, we got to get in motion. No, you got 6 weeks to write it and get in motion on this deal. Rushing it once again. So he makes this movie, Deadpool comes out, the trailers come out, and the studio's like, I don't want another Batman v Superman response. People responded really well to Deadpool 2. The trailer had Ballroom Blitz in it. Let's make that our movie. So they literally pass off his film to the trailer people. They do reshoots, and they totally rework his movie. Rework the whole thing to be more like the trailers, removing everything he was trying to do, create this Frankenstein monster out of it. And of course, even more offensive, we get Justice League the next year, where there was constant butting of heads between Snyder and the studio about what he was trying to do, and then tragedy happens with his family. He steps away, and instead of bringing someone in to try and fulfill his vision as best they could to honor what he was trying to do, they bring in literally the guy that did the Avengers movies. Like, let's just get him and try and get him to, like, do a superficial little change on this deal to make it like those movies. Let's convert this Zack Snyder movie into our 4-quadrant MCU film in the DCEU. Like, they try and convert it, and you can't do that. Zack Snyder, the foundation of what that movie was, is not compatible with what a Joss Whedon movie is. And Joss Whedon, had he just made his own Justice League movie, I think could have easily made a good one. What he can't do is convert a Zack Snyder movie into a Joss Whedon movie that's only 2 hours long. And so you get this really, really gross, cynical abomination of a film where a studio stole one director's vision for a movie and like painted over it to make it this other thing, to try and convert it into an MCU film starring DC characters. It's reactionary, like it's everything that you don't do. And it's the totally wrong way to make a movie. And that's the film we got, and it wasn't good. And so this movie comes out, and you can look at what's happened over the last 6 years since then. Suddenly they shift away from team-up movies and rushing to do things to standalone stories, and let's try and be really funny. Let's try and be dark. Let's try and get James Gunn. Let's try and do something that's for younger people. Like, it's just all over the place, just overreacting to everything that's happened. No clear vision, no guidance, just so many different things happening, and so much of it going to the early phases where they put out these Frankenstein monster movies. Reason number 5, they infuriated the talent. So as it turns out, when you hire a bunch of A-listers or actors that are on their way to be the A-list, and directors that some of them have Oscars, some of them have big gigantic hits, and you take their movie, that movie the actors signed on for, and the movie that the storytellers wrote, directed, and everything like that. When you take their movies and then change them into something else and slap their name on it, you make them mad. When you make Ben Affleck, who's like in the middle of a divorce, come back and reshoot a movie that he's already shot with a director that's not nearly as good with the talent, and it's not the movie he signed on for, you make him kind of mad. And especially when whatever Joss Whedon was doing on set, they alienate almost every single one of their talent from the early phases of this deal, and they lose so many of them, or there's trouble with them. And so you come out of Justice League, the movie that brought everybody together, and then you break up the talent through the process of making the movie. And you lose the people that were shaping the early phases. The closest thing to the vision caster, Zack Snyder, he's so far out. He's so far gone. And so are these other people. So everything you were building towards, you're kind of resetting 4 years into this deal. Reason number 6, they infuriated the fan base. The other side to this is us fans are paying attention to this and we're like, wait a minute, that Justice League movie you just released, That doesn't feel very much like a Zack Snyder movie. There's a lot of jokes in there that feel like Joss Whedon movies. Wait a minute, I just looked at the trailer that Zack Snyder put out before he left the project. There's a lot of footage in there that's not in the movie that you released. The color scheme for the final battle is completely and totally different. What went on here? What on earth is going on here? And it became really clear that something fishy was going on. And you get this scenario where as soon as the fans discover what went on, which is they set out to make movies and the studio screwed the whole thing up. And like, if you're into storytelling, filmmaking, that makes you mad. If you like Batman, you like the Justice League, this makes you mad. And so they infuriated the fan base. So much so that they've created such a legendary movement of angry people on the internet that they got a joke about it in the Barbie movie. Like, what is the epitome of people, like passionate, infuriated people on the internet with a cause related to movies? Well, of course, it's Zack Snyder fans. Because they infuriated the fan base with how they treated this. So they lost a bunch of their top talent and the audience for their movies. You just made them mad. So the people that weren't crazy about Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, they were already like, I'm not digging this too much. And the people that were digging it, you just provoked them. You made them mad. You're like, these jerks screwed up the thing I did like. So now nobody likes your franchise and you're 4 years in. And you've lost your Visionaries, and you lost your Batman and your Superman. Reason number 7, they abandoned or lost their superstars after only 5 movies. There was just a total mismanagement of their top IPs, their top characters, properties, things like that. So we come out of Justice League, and they've set up now Superman could be a main, to get his proper Man of Steel 2, where he's an established Superman that's a little bit more traditional. We've done a couple movies with Batman, and ever since they hired Ben Affleck has a Oscar for screenwriting, and he directed a Best Picture winner, and of course, he's a movie star. As soon as he's cast as Batman, there are murmurs, is Oscar winner, screenwriter, director, going to make a Batman movie? And then they're like, he's doing it and he's working on it. And we've got A-list actor, Oscar winner, a lot of statues on his mantle for his ability to make great movies. He's doing a Batman movie. And then they had Joss Whedon come in to redo Justice League, and his whole life collapses and he's like, I'm out of here. So you lose your Batman and you lose your Oscar-winning storyteller to make that movie. And whatever went down with Henry Cavill, I want to know, like, what was this deal to where Henry Cavill's like, they don't hire him, they don't make Man of Steel in 2019 or whatever. Like, it doesn't happen. Our Superman he's brought him back to life and he's just gone. But in these same windows of time, we put out a standalone Joker movie. So DCEU is trying to get its traction, trying to have big hits, and Joker comes out and makes $1 billion, totally disconnected from DCEU. And the Joker that we do have in the DCEU doesn't really make any more appearances besides in like basically a post-credit scene in a director's cut. So Joker is a $1 billion character in and of himself. It basically disappears from the actual DCEU. Batman disappears for years from the DCEU, but they hire someone to do a Batman movie. Not in the DCEU and not with Ben Affleck. So because of their horrible mismanagement, the way they decided to do all of this stuff, by infuriating their talent, they lost their heaviest hitter, Batman, their superstar, Batman, their Oscar-winning screenwriter director, Ben Affleck. They lost it. And so all of a sudden there's this gigantic Batman-shaped hole in their franchise and a Superman-shaped hole in their franchise with whatever went down with Henry Cavill. And so you look at what happens over the next few years, it's not like there wasn't a Batman movie that was made and a Joker movie that was made. It's not like some of these things didn't happen. They just weren't in the franchise that needed superstars. And even like in Shazam, we're going to do a cameo, and they literally have Superman walk out like this. It's a Batman shirt, so wrong shirt choice. But like Superman walks out like this because they couldn't get Henry Cavill to walk in and show his face. And for one day of work, they couldn't get him to do it. What was that? Like, what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? So they lose their superstars, talent, characters, and you're trying to build a universe with like Justice League type stuff without your main pieces, without your building blocks that everyone shows up for in once. Reason number 8, a shared universe that doesn't really share all that much anymore. Now, when you look at the Snyderverse, the early era, that felt like a shared universe where there was a shared tone, characters coming together, and plot lines that intersected with one another and were building towards things. But once that collapsed and like, oh crap, we rushed to that too quickly, then they overcorrected in the other direction and went, let's just focus in on standalone stories, individual characters, let's avoid team-up movies, and let directors do their own thing. So suddenly you have a shared universe that doesn't really share anything. Once Snyder's out, once it's no longer Snyderverse, why is this a shared universe at all? And you get Aquaman, which is very bright, lively. It doesn't feel like an MCU movie, but it's in the same ballpark of big adventure, lots of humor, bright, very broad appeal. And Aquaman is the highest grossing DC movie of all time. So after Justice League, a year after Justice League, DC gets their biggest hit of all time with Aquaman doing kind of this big, broad appeal, funny, big adventure that involves water. So I guess it does well globally because it has water in it, or a lot of water in it. But that movie's very different from Shazam that came out a few months later. That's about a family. It's smaller in size. And then it's, big as a superhero movie, but with demons in it. And then a year later, those are all very different from Birds of Prey, which is rated R. Once again, kind of like smaller scale, Guy Ritchie kind of type movie, except in the DCEU, starring a bunch of ladies. And then you get Wonder Woman 1984, that's bright and colorful. And then you get the Suicide Squad, that's very like hard, edgy humor. Like, we are all over the place with tone and style, and there's nothing really pulling together. There's like light references to where Superman shows up, but you don't even see Henry Cavill, and they've got like a Batarang. It's just subtle little references to it being a shared universe, but the tone is different. There's no shared plot lines. There's nothing pulling them together. And so it's a shared universe with the negatives of a shared universe, which is to say, if you're excited for a universe, then you're excited for the next movie. But if you're not, it can hold it against you. So this one doesn't get the benefit of like the excitement of we're building towards things and who will show up in this movie. It doesn't have any of those benefits, but it has the negatives of, I didn't like Birds of Prey. I think I'll sit out the next one. There's no reason for this to be a shared universe with what it turned into. Reason number 9, they failed to capitalize on their wins, a little bit of this kind of COVID, but essentially early on, they built momentum by having kind of these event films with team ups, and we're building towards Justice League. We had excitement related to that. And then obviously that crumbled, as we talked about before. The year afterwards, they have a big win with Aquaman, and right before Justice League, they had a big win with Wonder Woman. So they had a couple big wins and in different ways. Wonder Woman was loved by fans and critics. Aquaman, highest grossing DC movie of all time. And so you have something there to build off of. You have a couple of our Justice League members that have a thing that worked. And with Wonder Woman, it's like, I don't know what went wrong in the storytelling process, but they came up with a very weird direction to take things. It had a dramatic tonal shift where I rewatched Wonder Woman 1984 last night, and it does not feel at all like the first movie. And some of that's World War 1 versus 1984. Like, I get why there's some changes, but it doesn't feel consistent with itself. I think the plot was a misfire. There's a lot of just bad ideas in there. And then some of it was just bad luck with COVID of they didn't get a movie that made a splash in theaters that felt like an event when they really needed one. We need to like get some things that get people talking. And instead they have a lackluster movie released during COVID and on streaming. And so it just didn't make the ripples that it needed to. A lot of that's the movie's fault, and some of that is COVID's fault. And then perhaps in the same ballpark, Aquaman made over $1 billion. They had a movie that was red hot, and it took 5 years to make a sequel. And so instead of riding that momentum, all right, Aquaman did well, let's do it again. Let's keep this going. By 5 years later, we forgot that we all went to go see the first movie. And it feels ancient by now. Like, just like, why would we do this? And that's another one that kind of falls into this, but there's a lot of these movies just took way too long to come out. The Flash came out 6 years after Justice League. They cast Ezra Miller like 20 years ago. He was in elementary school or whatever. And he just got a movie this year. And they went through so many different scripts and writers, directors, and Ezra Miller troubles and dramas and all of that. So by the time the movie comes out, it's like, who cares? Like, that movie needed to come out in 2019. So you do 2018, Aquaman makes $1 billion. The next year you do a Flash movie that's not Flashpoint, that's more of a kind of a starter film, that's more traditional. So you do a Flash movie riding that wave of momentum. The next year you get a Wonder Woman movie. Notice how all of a sudden we have much more consistency of our actual stars. But nope, we didn't do that. 2019 you get Shazam. And this like pocket little thing. And Flash comes out way too late after too many crimes have been committed, too many allegations, and when the universe was dying, and it just felt like, oh, I guess this movie actually is going to come out, but literally came out years too late. Aquaman, years too late. Some of it's COVID, some of it caused delays in production. Some of it that was out of their control. Some was just on them. And then everything that released this year, that'll be 4 DCEU movies, released after they said none of this stuff matters. We're rebooting it. Who cares about any of this? Because we're cutting ties. And none of them were written to close out story arcs. None of them were written to close out a universe. They just went, throw in the towel, let's do something different. Canceled all of them. So they all felt like leftovers. They were way too late, failing to capitalize on wins, failing to build momentum entirely. Which is bizarre that you would do any of this. And reason number 10, the one kind of at the center of all of this, an utter lack of top-level leadership. There's plenty of criticisms that you can throw the way of Disney and the MCU. No shortage of them. But when Disney bought Marvel Studios in the middle of Phase 1, one of the big conversations between Kevin Feige and Bob Iger was one where Bob Iger basically went, Kevin, I'm buying your studio because you know what you're doing. This is working. What do you need from me to continue doing it? And the top level leadership saw someone they trusted and gave them the resources to run with it and make it happen. And so one guy, Kevin Feige, that's the reason Kevin Feige got all the praise for over 10 years and then has gotten a lot of crap the last couple of years. But there's a guy that was actually in charge of leading it and was trusted by these people up here. And maybe the last few years, that's part of the problem. Iger's out, Chapek, like whatever happened with Disney Plus, that was broken. But for a long time, these guys up here trusted this guy to do his thing. And the DCEU never did that. There was always too many cooks in the kitchen. They were always like, Zack Snyder, do your thing. Just kidding. They were always having different executives doing different things.
There was this revolving door of executives, both with Warner Brothers and DC. And it just felt like every 18 months, someone new would come in and someone new would come in and someone new would come in.
Right. And
we were just getting whiplash.
Back in January of 2017, very early on in my YouTube channel, one of the things I did for that month there was I would get home from work and I would shoot a video about whatever the news was that day, movie news was, just real quick. And that month, it seemed like every day they were announcing a new DC movie. Like they had like 3 different Joker projects that were in the works. One of them came out. 3 different Harley Quinn projects announced. One of them came out. Cyborg never happened. Flash happened, but way down the line. They were going to do Green Lantern as a Lethal Weapon style buddy comedy. Never happened. And Ben Affleck's The Batman never happened. They kept announcing because it wasn't one guy guiding a universe. It was a bunch of different executives pitching things and trying to make things happen.
The person that was running Brothers at the time had done this big release where they had pitched like these 20 movies over the next 10 years that like none of which were written yet. And like, it was just so crazy how much sort of architecture was just being built, on air.
Like there was a bunch of chatter about trying to do a Batman Beyond movie. And I was like, that was like the one time I've had a scoop on my channel is that my buddy Griffin has some inside sources. And so on my podcast in 2020, we talked about how they were going to do a Batman Beyond movie and jump forward once they realized they're not going down this path with Michael Keaton, we're rebooting the whole deal. Other people reported this like, whoa, the reason they brought him is we were looking to do a Batman Beyond movie. We'd said it 2 years earlier. Because there's just so many executives trying to get their own little thing happening.
And every new person that would come in, like, we're going to go bigger.
And you start getting into more recently where they filmed a Batgirl movie. They filmed a movie with Michael Keaton in it, with Batman in it, shelved it. That's insane. And then they put Henry Cavill in Black Adam. He's coming back. You guys have asked for it. We're giving it to you. The Rock does a press tour about how they're going to do a Black Adam versus Superman movie. Huge press tour. The next month, like they literally, now we're doing Man of Steel 2. We're going to do it. The next month, they have James Gunn come out and say, just kidding, we're rebooting the whole deal. I don't blame James Gunn for that. That is Warner Brothers being a wreck, an utter mess from beginning to end with no actual leadership and a bunch of people competing for power, different executives greenlighting things in different places. So things are showing up all over the place. Just a disaster of upper level leadership having no centralized person in charge of it. And a bunch of middle managers with a lot of power and none of them, communicating with each other, all of them trying to win or whatever was going on. But insane levels of disorganization. I cannot fathom that they would announce Henry Cavill's coming back, put him in a movie, while at the same time, parallel things happening. We publicly say Henry Cavill's coming back, while we are negotiating with James Gunn. And that's not even all the ones that were out there. They're working on Man of Steel 2 with Henry Cavill. There was the Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman project that might be separate or might be the same one as the one with Michael B. Jordan. And then James Gunn said he'd been writing Superman Legacy for months prior to even them starting talking about him taking over the studio. 3 different Superman projects from 3 different executives. That's insane. Crazy levels. And that's how the DCEU has been run all along. Yeah, Zack Snyder, do your thing. Just kidding. Hey, David Ayer. Oh, you want to make a really dark Suicide Squad movie? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just kidding. Let's make it like Deadpool. Let's make it like the trailer. Let's have the trailer people rewrite and re-edit the movie to be like the trailer. That's insane. But when you do that, no one's communicating to each other. Everyone's fighting for power. You get no momentum. You get a segmented audience. You infuriate talent. You infuriate the fan base. And you take a set of characters that many of us love and you ruin the whole thing. And it doesn't work. The individual projects, I liked most of them. As a shared universe, it's a disaster. It's a wreck. It's a mess. And I blame Warner Brothers. I blame these top guys up here that they just from the beginning didn't know what they were doing, didn't know how to manage it, didn't know who to hire that would deliver what they actually want. Like if you want something that's the MCU, you need to bring in someone that has that vibe to them. And that's not Zack Snyder. And I'm not saying that's what they should have done. I'm not saying no negative to Zack Snyder, but I'm saying if that's what they wanted, Zack Snyder's not the guy to do that. But they brought Zack Snyder and David Ayer and then immediately got cold feet. And then immediately greenlit 1,000 projects. Most of them didn't happen. And it didn't work. And you look at it, and I hope someday an amazing book is written about this disaster, this mess, because it should have worked. It could have worked. Could have been awesome. And maybe James Gunn will make something awesome. I fear the superhero bubble, the comic book movie bubble, has popped. We are past the peak. And so they're coming in to maybe do the right thing in the sense of having centralized leadership, but they're doing it too late. And so it might not work simply because it's the wrong time. And they've burned through too much trust. That's my take on it. That's my look at the DCEU and what on earth happened. Let me know your thoughts on it. Why do you think the DCEU failed? And I'm going to rank all the DCEU things one last time. The movies, the heroes, the villains, final battles, all that fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks, as well as, of course, end of the year list. It's going to be a packed week on Sean Chandler Talks About Keep Talking Movies and TV Too Much in 2024.